Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. You know, Laura and I were stuck in the financial matrix, and if you haven't watched it, I would encourage you to watch the movie The Matrix. It was as far back, 1999 now. It's one of those movies, though, that has a long shelf life because you can still watch it today, and it's just so relevant because it captures the struggle. The Matrix is a form of control. And in the movie The Matrix, there's this one scene that's so epic. And I felt like as I watched it, and I didn't have all the answers at that point, I still don't have all the answers. I know a little bit more now than I knew when I watched the movie. But I remember as I was watching the scene, I felt, man, that was Lori and me to a T, and maybe it's you and your family. It's a scene where Neo finally tracks down Morpheus and is looking for answers on the Matrix. And Morpheus sits down in his sunglasses and says, "Do you believe in fate, Neo?" "No." "Why?" "Because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my own life." Morpheus, "I know exactly what you mean. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?" And Lori and I looked at each other. "The financial matrix? Do you know what it is?" We nodded. The matrix is everywhere. It's all around us, even in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. The financial matrix is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Orrin and Lori. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the financial matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. Are you guys ready to see the financial matrix? Does anybody here want to know what the financial matrix is? Because if you understand that the financial matrix was not the first form of control, that there's actually been 3 matrices of control that the aristocracy in every age has used to control the productive capacity of the masses. I know when I start talking like that, someone says, "He's gone nuts. He's gone crazy," until you analyze the facts. Let me just quote to you from Bertrand de Juvenel, one of the top French philosophers, political philosophers of all time. He wrote a famous book called On Power, used in colleges around the world. And here's what he said, and this was the first big clue. I had some things going on in personal experience in business. Then I started asking better questions, and then I started reading more, and when I found this was the clue that started breaking it open. Here's what he said in his book On Power. "Whoever does not wish to render history incomprehensible by departmentalizing it into political, economic, or social issues would perhaps take the view that it is in essence a battle of dominant wills fighting in every way they can for the material which is common to everything they construct, the human labor force." Now let me interpret that. The aristocracy or the elites, the dominant wills, the powerful in every age, seek to control the productive capacity of the masses that do not have the power to resist. That goes on in every age. Let me give you an example, one that you learned if you paid attention at all. In high school history, you heard many times about the first 2 matrices of control. You've heard of the physical matrix because the physical matrix was slavery. It's a very simple form of control. It was a very simple, the physical matrix said this: We are stronger than you, so we just conquered your city or conquered your land, and instead of killing you, we're giving you a great deal. You get to be our slave. And what we're going to do is that means now we own you. That's better than getting killed, I guess. So we own you, and since we own you, we own your productive capacity. Anything you do from now on, we're going to take the excess productive capacity outside of just enough to let you live, let you sleep. You get to wake up tomorrow, and you do it again. You are a slave. And if we track back far enough into every family, track back far enough, somewhere way back in time, chances are one of your forefathers or foremothers was enslaved at some point because the physical matrix was thousands of years of activity. But eventually it fell. The physical matrix finally collapsed when Christianity permeated European society during the Middle Ages. After Rome was starting to fall, Christianity got so permeated into that culture that it became unacceptable for Christians to enslave brothers and sisters in Christ. They're like, man, it's just uncomfortable for me to say that I own someone when I really know I can't own people, since we're all made in the image of God. And because it was no longer accepted, it collapsed. Now watch this. If you go back and read the classical economists, all of the classical economists, Adam Smith, David Ricardo, John Stuart Mill, here's what they will tell you. There are three factors of production. There's labor, land, and capital. Those are the three factors of production. Anything that you see, this building that we're in, this big Coliseum, took labor to build. It took land because it's on land. And it took capital. Somebody had to have some money to build this so that they could rent it out to us. Those are the three factors of production. So here was the insight. If the elites of every age are seeking to control the productive capacity of the masses, they must be doing it through the three factors of production. They must be doing it through labor, they must be doing it through land, or they must be doing it through capital, because those are the only three factors of production. Now, I've already mentioned slavery. That one was pretty straightforward. I own you, therefore I own your labor. But when that one fell, just imagine, let's go here and let's write all three. It's like what's happened is we have captured the playbook of the enemy. Labor, land, and capital. And it's like in the playbook they said, we can't do this one anymore. Let's just take that out. Okay. Is there any way, hey guys, why don't we create a matrix around land? And if the theory is correct, we ought to see in history some matrix around land. Has anybody ever heard of feudalism? Serfdom. What was that? If you go search, you could Google it online right now. You'd search feudalism and it would say something like this. It was a system where the aristocracy captured all the land in Europe and forced the serfs to live on their land. Of course, when the serfs lived on the land, they had to pay a price to live on the land. And the deal was 50% of your productive capacity goes to me. You can plant that field, but I'm going to take half the harvest. And a couple days a week, you got to come over here and work my field because I'm the Lord of the land and I'm not going to work, so you got to work my land as well. And that system lasted for 1,000 years, the land matrix. So you had the physical matrix, it collapsed. The land matrix lasted for 1,000 years during the Middle Ages of Europe. And it only collapsed when the city started having a rebirth and the serfs figured out that they didn't need to live on the land anymore in order to survive. They could escape to the city. And the famous saying in the Middle Ages, one of them, is in the city air, the peasant breathes free. In the city air, the peasant breathes free. I can escape from my landlord. I can escape from the Lord of the land, escape over here and work as a baker, a butcher, a candlestick maker, or any of the other professions in the city, and I will do work. And instead of having to collect corn to eat, I can actually do the work and collect a little bit of gold, maybe a little bit of silver. And through using money, asset money, based upon gold, silver, copper, any type of asset, it started capitalism. It started a free market again. And the serfs started escaping the land matrix in droves. And it collapsed the land matrix because the landlords couldn't force the serfs to stay on the land anymore. and the land matrix collapsed. And it was the greatest day of freedom. You heard Oliver up here talking about freedom. When the land matrix collapsed, somewhere around 1450, 1500 AD, there were 400 years of the greatest growth in middle-class wealth. The people like us that didn't have a lord or a baron or some other nickname behind us. We weren't part of the aristocracy. We were just serfs. We were just masses of people that just were looking, yearning for an opportunity. And for 400 years, there was more wealth created by people that did not have aristocratic names than ever before in history. The gold standard was in place to where there was no ability, because the aristocracy, if you take a look at it, they said, man, labor's gone, land's gone. There's only one thing we can control that can still keep our matrices alive, and that is controlling capital. And you know, there was just one check. There was one check, one barrier that kept the aristocracy from controlling the capital, and that was the fact that anytime they printed too much paper, the masses could demand that that paper be restored in gold, and it checked the ability for them to manipulate the paper at will. That check, for 400 years, created the biggest blossoming of wealth for people like us. And somewhere around the turn of the 19th century, it collapsed with the beginning of the buildup and then eventually World War I. And when that collapsed, asset money disappeared. And what we've been living in since that time is debt money. Debt money. When you take a look at an economy, in the United States of America and Canada, it's very close. 70% of all the money that we see in the United States of America is created through mortgages. Debt money. Debt money. What they have done is they are slowly but surely bleeding the freedom from the people, and they've created a financial matrix. The physical matrix was the labor matrix. The land matrix was through feudalism. Now the financial matrix controls the capital. There's a saying, the golden rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There's another saying, the financial golden rule is, he who owns the gold makes the rules. But now with the financial matrix, there is now a third rule. He who controls the fool's gold controls the fools. You say, Orrin, did you just call me a fool? No, I'm saying we are fools if we allow a system to where they can, if we as all of the people in this room, if we took our money and put it into a bank, and let's say we put $10 million into the banks, and then they took that $10 million and through this system, magical system called fractional reserve banking that was created through the financial matrix, they can take that $10 million and they loan out $100 million. Now think about it. $10 million of real money is turned into $100 million of debt money. That means 90 million of it is just debt money. It's created out of thin air. When they give you a mortgage on your property, you think that that money came from other people putting money into the bank and they loaned it to you. But most of it actually was created out of thin air, and yet you've got to work for 30 years to pay back what they created out of thin air, digitized debt. Does that bother anybody else? I sat there, when I began to understand this, I'm like, what? This is the most amazing form. This is the most amazing matrix yet. The aristocracy has done better than ever before because they loan us fool's gold and we have to pay back in real gold. Can you just digitize money and send it back to them? I mean, have you ever thought that I grabbed the Wall Street Journal the other day. I was in a private jet flying up here with Lori and I was reading, I just happened to grab it. First time I've seen the Wall Street Journal in a year. And I just happened to look at it, and I just quickly look at the front page, and they're talking about quantitative easing and what the Federal Reserve is going to do with interest rates, which means how much money they're going to create. And I'm looking at that, and they're like, the best minds from the brightest schools are now sitting there. How much money are we going to create and put into the economy to stimulate the economy through quantitative easing, to make it easier for money to flow through the economy? It's something cool that doctorates discuss if you do it for the federal government and the banking system. If we as citizens were say, you know what, let's tell the government we don't need their quantitative easing. Let's ease it ourselves and let's print monopoly money. If you just, produce yourself $1 million, ease the economy, save the world. If we did it personally, we'd all be thrown in jail. They get another doctorate. They win the Nobel Prize for printing money. We get thrown in jail for printing money. Does anybody see a disparity there? That's because it's the matrix. If you're the ones in control, it's legal to do what you, as a citizen, it's illegal to do. That's your first, because justice has no eyes. That's a biblical concept. Justice has no eyes. Justice does not see people. It sees it's right or it's wrong. The financial matrix is wrong. And what you heard Lori telling was her personal story, and then you heard the debt. When you realize that the debt of the world is not by accident, it's by profit. Their profit is our pain. The new motto when you get married is not till death do us part, it's till debt do us part. The American Psychology Association did a study recently. And this study revealed that 72% of Americans go to bed at night at least once a month worried about money, stressed about money. Over 50%, 52% said that they worry whether they even have enough money to make their bills that month. Is anybody else concerned when half the people in the United States of America, and again, those statistics follow across the civilized world, because of debt money, people no longer have real asset money, and the value of the money changes at the will of those in power. Oh, Orrin, I think you're exaggerating. All right, well, let's just take a look at their admitted statistics. Their statistics say that if you took a dollar bill, a 1913 dollar bill, and buried it, put it in a box and buried it, and 100 years later, your grandfather did that, you come back 100 years later, pull that dollar out of the ground, and choose to spend it. What used to be able to buy a dollar's worth of value now buys 4 cents 100 years later. The financial matrix has siphoned off 25 times your value. Another way of saying that is it takes $25 today to buy what $1 used to buy in 1913. This is catastrophic. One more point. If you take a look at, I mentioned earlier that 70% of all the money in the United States of America is created through the mortgage system. The mortgage system, if you added up all the value of all the houses in the United States of America, you would come up at a figure of around $26 trillion worth of value. If you added up the value of every house in the United States, $26 trillion is on the line. If we go back to 1950s and ask, how much equity did the average American have in their house, that statistic would be somewhere around 80%, which means most of the house was owned outright. They only owed 20% on the left of the value on a mortgage. Very impressive statistics, actually. But the financial matrix never rests. Every night you go to bed, the financial matrix siphons off more money from you. Today, those same figures, 1955, 80% equity. 2012, 30% equity. 80% to 30%. That means 50% of the value of all the properties in the United States that used to be owned free and clear are now in debt. What is 50% of $26 trillion? Is that 13 trillion? That was more than the national debt until just recently. That money was lost by you, by me, and by other Americans, and really across the civilized world they're using the same techniques. All of that, the financial matrix is siphoning off the wealth over that 400 years that was created by the gold standard. In the last 100 years, most of that 400 years of wealth creation is now being siphoned back to the aristocracy. It's the most powerful form of control ever created. The fact that more people aren't asking, what is the financial matrix, merely backs up what the movie The Matrix said. They said the system is so perverse that people will fight for the debt system. They will fight to protect the very thing enslaving them. Do you know what's absolutely nuts about the financial matrix? The financial matrix is the only matrices ever created that doesn't coerce people into their enslavement. When you were a slave, you knew you were a slave. They forced you to be a slave. They were stronger than you. When you were a serf, you knew you were a serf because they forced you to live on the land to protect you from other lords that would attack. But when you're a subject of the financial matrix, you sold yourself into it.